whether we like it or not, right? There's just, perhaps it's an unpleasant fact, but it's an important one, is that even though number sense and math reasoning skills are important things to teach, and maybe we weren't teaching it well enough in the 80s, at some point there's just stuff you have to memorize. You got to memorize the times table.
So I'm gonna push back on that.
Oh yeah?
Because there is a way to get there where the facts are committed to memory, but you do not have to sit there and memorize a series of digits. So a great example.
There's a way to commit things to memory without memorizing. All right.
Correct.
I'm following you on this.
Okay.
I'm excited. Let's hear it.
So let's take multiplication facts, for example. So there may be certain facts that we have to get to the point where we just really know it. And maybe certain ones we drill, like fives, for example, right? The fives facts. But most kids are familiar with that because they've been counting by five since, the time that, they were, so a lot of them in kindergarten, some even younger than that, right? So most kids, when they come to us that are having difficulty with multiplication facts, most of them are comfortable with zeros, ones, twos, fives, and tens. Most of them are pretty fluent there, right? It's the others that we have trouble with. And so we can leverage the prerequisite knowledge that those kids have and teach them specific ways of thinking that are number sense techniques to figure it out. And the more that they do that, it becomes committed to memory. It becomes second nature. But we didn't sit there with a flashcard. So I'll give you an example. So let's say something like 7 times 4, for example. Mm-hmm. So for the fours facts, we teach kids, well, for anytime we take a number 2 times, we can double it to find a number 4 times. So if I know 7 2 times is 14, I can double 14. And I can double 14 because I can double 10, 20, double 4, 8, and put that together to make 28. So there's one example. Now we can then extend that out as we get more comfortable. Now, once we have our fours, well, we can find 7 8 times. We can think, well, I know 7 4 times is 28, and I can double 7 4 times to get 7 8 times. 28 doubled. 20 doubled is 40. 8 doubled is 16. 40 plus 16 is 56. So there's one example. Another example would be leveraging our 5 times. So let's say 8 times 7 as a good example, right? Which means 8 7 times. That's how we speak about it at Mathnasium. Yeah. That 8 times 7 means 8 7 times. It doesn't mean 7 groups of 8 or 8 groups of 7. We say 7 8 times.
It can also mean that.
That makes so much more sense.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. It doesn't mean that it doesn't actually.
What does that mean?
Right. It's yes. There's a cognitive dissonance there. And so, but when it comes to mastering our multiplication facts, thinking about it as 8 7 times is much more useful. So if I know 8 5 times is 40, so I can ask a child, well, so I can say 8 7 times is 8 5 times, and how many more 8s? 2 more 8s. 2 more 8s, yeah. So I have 8 5 times is 40. 2 more 8s is 16. 40 plus 16 is 56. Now, the more that I do that, the more that I engage in that way of thinking, the more that I have visuals that, structures that support my learning of that way of thinking, it becomes second nature. It becomes committed to my memory. So not only did I get the desired outcome, but the process of getting there helped build my number sense, and it was not painful.
And you become more fluent. I mean, maybe that's a better word than saying committed to memory. It's a fluency. We're building a fluency. And think about that. The kid who was just forced to memorize 8 times 7 is 56 missed out on all of that great mental math exercise in order to get there. And I feel like this is a really good example of what I'm talking about, where Mathnasium's figured out, how do we solve this problem of we've got kids just memorizing facts in the 80s, and it's still happening. That's
right, because they right, because reform math doesn't have a solution for this.
Right. So building in some great mental math into that process so that they can use that when the numbers get bigger. We would have missed out on that opportunity if we were just flashcards, just memorizing.
Right. Also,
plus it's stressful. And parents don't want to do it.
Right. It's stressful. And also when we get to division, when we've gone through this process of figuring out the facts, we understand that relative size. It's a lot easier to transfer that over to division facts when we've thought about it in this way, right? So that, 56 divided by 8. Oh, well, I know 8 5 times is 40. So, oh, that's right. I need 2 more 8s. That's 7. Right?
So how many of these?
How many of these are there inside of that?
How many 8s are there in 56?
Right, because I've had that inverse of, this number this many times. Well, that's all I'm doing is fitting that inside of this other number. And so I've got similar tools that I can use to get there with division if it doesn't come to me like that, right? Ultimately, what we want are for the facts to be there like this, but they're not always going to be at our disposal. So we need to have a structured way of figuring it out. And this is where school generally has gotten it wrong. A lot of the reform programs is that they are so afraid of directly teaching kids efficient ways to solve problems. And that's what
choosing like two methods, like choosing like 2 or 3 methods that we're going to focus on and we're going to practice that. It's kind of against the code of reform math. They would rather expose them to like 10 different methods and let them choose which one they'd like to use. And we've seen these kids coming in doing our assessments and
they're paralyzed because they don't know what to do.
They can't compute with large numbers because they haven't practiced 1 or 2 ways really well.
Right.